Hey, I'm Luke, and in this video I'm going to show you my sound design process that I use on commercial projects. So sound design is an incredibly broad subject and I can't really cover all of it in one video, but I'm just going to walk you through my current process. Hopefully you can take some value from it and hopefully teach you some things you may not have heard before. That's a sound joke, right? So with the soundtrack, I wanted the first part of the video to be slower and build up and then have this kind of climax at this shot here where you get the landscape reveal and the seagull. But the track doesn't naturally do this. So what I did was I went through the track to kind of find that drop, if you like. I know it's weird saying that a cinematic soundtrack has a drop, but it does. So there you can hear that extra thing come in. I think that's the technical term for it, extra thing. But you can see here, if you zoom in on the waveform, that's where this drop is coming in on the beat. What I've essentially done is I take that, take the drop and I take it to where I want the video to, where I want it to go in the video, which is this clip here, which I'll just like highlight a different color for the minute. What you could do is just purely take this soundtrack all the way back. And that works, to be fair, because it is doing it on the drop, but I was being fussy, so I wanted it to start just a bit further back, where there's a bit more of a build-up and it's a bit quieter. So I partitioned it where that where that beat drops, and I brought the part of the soundtrack that I wanted to the beginning. So that sounds pretty cool, but you can tell that there's a bit of a sharp kind of clash there. It's not really smooth, and that's just because the track's been cut up and it's now not flowing, the timing's off. It's not how the composer intended it to sound. You can see here, you can kind of, if you look at this peak right next to the, kind of on this cursor, they're now more in alignment. So this should flow better. And it does, but you can still hear there's a harsh kind of crossover. Now what I used to do, and what can, I mean, it will always give you a pretty good result, is I would just bring the first part of the track down to this layer here, and I would do a simple fade in, and try and get these to just perfectly kind of fade out over each other. With slightly better timing than I'm doing. And you get a result like this. And that will always give you pretty good results, and it's a pretty safe bet because it just gives you more control over the waveforms and how the tracks are flowing into each other. In my old age, I have become lazier and I found a effect that basically does this in one click. And it sometimes doesn't get it right, but sometimes it's pretty spot on. And that we'll need to come to effects, type in, come to effects and type in constant power. And then bring this down. I mean, you can leave it, you can experiment with how long you leave the crossover. And to me, that sounds even better than how I did it. And this is just a one-click thing, and it smooths that all out for you. So I'd recommend doing this. If this doesn't work and it's still sounding a bit naff, try the double layer method. But this will pretty much get you good to go every time. Now just coming to the beginning, we want to make sure that this is fading in nicely. So we're going to use these keyframes. I can't zoom in any more than that. So we're going to use these keyframes here to just make sure that's not a harsh jump in, and we're allowing the music to roll in. These may seem like tiny details, but your ear will notice it if it's not there. So now the music is in place, the clips are being guided by the soundtrack. And obviously I've already cut up the clips to match the soundtrack. General rule of thumb, you want to try and ensure that clips are coming in on beat. So obviously this main clip of the sequence here comes right in on the drop. The second thing I'll do, once I've added in my soundtrack, I'll add in something called Walla. Essentially, Walla is like background noise, and it will essentially just give your clip some life and some texture. So this Walla is from a sound effects pack that I bought, and it's called Coastal Dream. So I just whack that in. And I also like to basically just color code these so that I can tell green will be soundtrack, yellow will be Walla, and I'll show you on the finished version that normal sound effects will be pink. Cool. What I am going to do is bring the Walla in, and just so I can hear what it's doing, I'm going to mute the soundtrack. Now I can just hear the sound effect without the soundtrack. So with this Walla, if we're imagining that the drone is capturing audio, we're trying to recreate what it would be hearing if it had a microphone on it. So when it's closer to the water, I want it to be louder. And if it's a shot further away, especially if the water's more still, I'm going to drop that gain down first by maybe 10 and just experiment with dropping the gain down and seeing if it makes sense to your ear. For me as well, it's still not quite enough. So you can either drop the gain down again, or you can add a low pass filter. And that's just going to make it sound further away. So the further you are from something, the less clear you can hear it. And essentially the low pass filter is going to make it sound more muddy. It is essentially, I believe, and again, that sounds quite harsh. So you can have it sounding harsh for effect, or you can whack a constant power on these, bring it in. And I think that sounds better smoothed over. And I'm probably going to make that even quieter, because I just think it's more appropriate. And then this clip, we're looking at the village nearby. There is no water in shot. I'm just going to remove this Walla because I don't think it is appropriate, and I'm going to constant power the end of this so it kind of drops off. But I'm going to bring it over a few steps. And you can play around with the length of that drop off. This is what we would call an L cut. So in editing, you get J cuts and L cuts with audio. A J cut is when the audio from the following clip starts off in the previous clip, and we call it a J cut because it ramps up like a J. This may be the other way around when you're watching it. An L cut is the opposite. An L cut is when the audio from the current clip carries over into the next clip but drops off, and that curve looks like an L. And that is essentially what we're doing here. So you get your J cuts and your L cuts. Now what you can do is, with this Waller, look at what you've got going on in your clip. So I can see down here there's some cars. Are you going to necessarily hear them from this distance? No, but it can always be worth adding them in. Okay, so I can't find any car sounds in my personal library. So what I'm going to do is bring up Soundly, which can be a really good library for finding sounds for your projects. So it has a bunch of stuff you can search from. I'm just going to type in car. So I'm just going to grab that. And that's what I love about Soundly, is you just grab it straight into your project. And that for me, even that beginning bit there, as opposed to this, I don't think that louder sound there would really work. So I'm going to label this as Waller. Oops, didn't mean to do that. And to be honest, that's fine. And the rule with Waller, the rule with all sound effects, but definitely with Waller and your background music, you don't want it to be noticeable, if that makes sense. Like, you should just be watching it and your ear puts you in the scene and you think, oh yeah, that kind of sounds normal. If you can tell that there's been sounds added, that's when you're doing it wrong. It's one of those things where if you get it right, your audience won't notice, and that's what you want. But if you get it wrong, they will notice, and it just starts to seem really cheap. So like, that'll do. Bear in mind, we're going to be saved by having soundtrack over it anyway, but I'm just giving you an idea of how you can edit these things with sound. So for me, we're closer to the action now. So I'm going back to this C sound, and I'm going to take that low pass off. I kind of like that volume level. I'll maybe increase it a little bit as we are slightly closer than we were here. And the waves are choppier, you can see. And I'm going to just bring this in. Again, you can do it with constant power, or you can do it with keyframes. If I match the keyframe up to the highest part of the volume, we'll get a perfect J cut. And you can experiment with bringing this in even sooner, so you can have like a nice... So the thing with J cuts is it builds up your audience's expectation of what's to come next. So if you can hear the sound of waves on this clip, it's just building up that drama. So this is our last clip before the climax. We can still hear the C. Just to freshen it up, I'm going to take an earlier part of the clip and jump us in here, just so it sounds like it was shot at a different time. I'm going to grab my constant power. I'm going to make that a little bit shorter because I want this transition to be punchier. That is a little bit loud, so take it down. Cool, I like that. So with this climax, we're wanting the sound to really punctuate the climax of the video and to really make it pop. So we've got our two elements now. We've got the Waller and we've got the soundtrack. So if I just play these now both together. Now I can already tell this is too loud. So I'm going to take it down by 5. I do want it to be loud in the opening because I want to set the scene, but then I don't want it to overpower the actual soundtrack itself. So what I'm going to do is put a keyframe here and just have this tail off. I like to work in increments of 5 or 10. So I'm going to bring this down just by 5. Also making sure we're keeping an eye on our audio levels here. We don't want anything going over 0.6 really. Cool. So you can adjust your soundtrack level in comparison to the Waller. End of the day, it's a creative choice. For me, I want the soundtrack to be heard more. I don't want it to feel like, again, I don't want the audience to be drawn to the sound effects too much. I'm going to continue this Waller over here, because it's a continuation of that previous shot. In my mind, we're following this bird here. It comes in, and then these birds here are kind of helping to continue the story. Now, I'm going to stretch this out and just drop it off by 10 as we're now a lot further away. I think 5 works. And again, just play around with it until it sounds right. It's not going to be an exact science. You're just trying to craft the sound with what you're seeing. I like that because I still want to hear the sound, because I can see the waves crashing on this rock. And I want to be able to hear that as well. And this is a bit closer up, so I'll just dial it up more. And what I'll do, I'll probably take it back. Just so we have that. Then this shot. Just gonna drop it off a little bit. And I'm going to have this tail off actually towards the end, as I want the soundtrack to kind of win out in the end. Almost like that feeling of when you see in movies where like someone's so concentrated that the sound, their ears start to fuzz and the sound just gets quieter and quieter as their focus is drawn towards something. You can do that with sound as well. Just have the sound dip out and the soundtrack stay the same. And the soundtrack will start to really push that emotion through. Because that's the thing with film, with video, is if there's no sound, if you can't hear anything, it can then become unrealistic, especially if you're looking at something that clearly has movement, that clearly in real life would have sound. But you can then start to use that as an artistic tool. So if it then starts to become unrealistic, it can either feel unrealistic and feel like it's not working, or it can feel unrealistic in a good way. It then becomes hyper-realistic. It then becomes creative. And that's when you have this, you can have that beautiful moment where the sound disappears, the diegetic sound, that sound that you're hearing in the scene. And you're just left with the soundtrack. And the soundtrack, because it's only the soundtrack, it's almost like the soundtrack is staring you in the face and asking you how you're feeling in that moment. And it's drawing that emotion out. At least that's how I feel. Maybe I'm weird, but that's how it makes me feel when the sound drops out and I'm just there for that soundtrack. We've got a really good base for the video, but now it's time to add the little seasoning on top, which is our sound effects, essentially. What I'm going to do is start with the things that interest me most. As I've been going through the video, I'll be kind of observing the things that stick out at me. So if we look at this climax here, where I'm wanting to kind of build this drama, we've got a lot of elements. We've got the waves crashing in louder. We've got the climax of the music. But we can see a bird coming in, and I want to highlight that with the sound of a seagull. I've got a couple different options. Now, I love this transitions pack because they've built this sound ramp before the sound effect, so it builds up and then you hear the sound effect, and it just sounds wicked, especially for these transition of shots. So you've got seagulls and bird squawk. I'm gonna go for that because you can hear that kind of like, it's like a timer before. I just think it sounds wicked. Top tip, if it sounds wicked and it's not too overpowering, do it. Cool, so again, I'm going to mute all the layers apart from the sound design layer. And I'm going to get the timing of this spot on. So where does this come in? Okay, so we can see by the waveform it's coming in here. So just get this to match up with. Awesome. Now, one thing with these sound effects, especially sound effects that are produced in a studio, is they can sound a little bit too clean. As my voice sounds talking to you now, there's not a lot of echo. I'm in a small room. You have to sometimes consider that the environment in which the sound effect was recorded is not the same environment that you are dropping it into. So this sound effect would have been recorded in a studio with microphone, with the sound softening pads, and they've mastered it and made it sound beautiful. But that's not how it would sound if you were hearing it. It sounds a little bit too perfect, so if you can add imperfection back in and that variation that you just would get in real life, that's another element that's going to help it sound more real and less like a sound effect. One of my favourite things to do is just to add reverb. So it's not, so we're in a large open space, so I think there would be more reverb than if we were just in a small studio. You can really have fun with this reverb function. You can make the room size sound massive. The decay you can whack right up, so it sounds like. Which I love that, to be honest. I really like that. Even if it doesn't sound super realistic, you can bend how realistic it sounds to serve your creative purpose. So if we listen to this all together. I might actually think that's too much and it's taken away from the original punchiness of the effect. Yeah. So there was something that was overpowering it then as I was listening to it. And for me it is this walla here. So I liked the sound of the walla in relation to everything else. So you've got two options. You can either just bring this original walla down, or you can bring down the entire track. And I'm just going to bring down this section here because actually I like how all the rest is sounding. There we go. And by bringing down the walla, it's actually making this seagull sound effect sound better because you've got less sound effects competing for the same amount of sound. You can only cram so much sound in, and the more sound effects you layer on top of each other, whether that's your atmospheres, your walla, your soundtrack and your sound design, if you stack too much and it's not balanced, it will sound really muddy and you'll start to lose the impact of each individual part. So I like how that's sounding. I want to emphasize the transition to this next clip. Perfect. So for this next transition, I'm actually going to use two sounds, and I want to emphasize two bits of action. I want to emphasize the waves crashing against the rock, and also these little guys flying in and see there's 3 of them. Where we can only see 1 in this clip, it's now 3. So we can emphasize that really nicely by using this flutter sound effect. Just want to make sure the timing aligns with where we want it. So that to me sounds a bit too loud and unrealistic, so we can do some work on that. The other sound I want to punctuate is the waves hitting this rock. Now you combine that with the walla. To be honest, now that it's all in there, I will bring... Oh, will I? How does it sound with the soundtrack? The only thing we've got to watch out for now, we've stacked 4 different sound things on top of each other, is we're starting to peak with our audio, which we don't want, so something has to go. I'm going to bring the walla down slightly because I want this wave to be heard. I'm also will bring this down. Cool. So the fact that it peaks sometimes can help to bring you back from getting overexcited and putting too much in. Because again, at the end of the day, you don't want your audience to notice. If your audience is sat there thinking you've done a great job sound designing, unless they're in the industry and they have the ear for it, then you do want that. But if it's your average Joe watching and he goes, those sound effects sound mad, you're probably drawing too much attention to them. Cool, so I've gone through the video now and I've added in those extra sound effects at different points. So at the beginning we've gone for, if we solo these, we've got a little drum roll impact. And again, the drum roll's not diegetic, it wouldn't have been heard in the scene, but it just adds a bit of drama to it. We've also got that paired with the wave, and the wave is in the scene. So we've kind of got that action and also heightened reality working together to create this sound. And that just, I feel like that gets us in the scene nicely. Then you've got your walla, which helps to carry on the atmosphere. And moving into this clip, we've got a little seagull noise to emphasize this seagull coming in. And so all together, that now sounds like this. Cool, so you can leave that music to fade out like this if you like. And that works perfectly fine. Just one last thing, an alternative to that is throwing in a kind of sound ramp at the end to punctuate the ending. So at the minute, the music just fades down and it cuts to black. You could even, if you want to, visually, you can have a fade come here. So you can make this fade down if you want. All of them totally valid choices, just different options you have. I quite like that, I think that looks nice. what I actually did on the reel I produced was I had this come down and then I punctuated the end with this sound effect here. So with a wave at the end, so it then sounds like this. You could then, if this was a commercial, you could have your title pop up here. That kind of thing. So that's just a different option to the end. I just played around with that. I experimented with, even though the music should be winding down, what happens if I ramp it up at the end that it cuts to black? Well, it creates this nice little moment here. So hopefully you can take a lot away from that. There's so much more to sound design than what I've shown in this video, but this was just me breaking down a project I did. And just, I think the key things to remember, one, try not to overdo it. Again, you don't want your audience to know you sound designed it. You just want the video to sound gorgeous. If they think someone's played with the sound and sound designed it, you may have gone too far and made your sound design too obvious, too loud, and not feel natural enough. And the other thing to remember is that there are rules to sound design, but rules are made to be broken. Like most things in the creative space, it's good to learn what the commonly accepted rules are and the way of doing things. And once you've mastered the way things should be done, you can then have fun experimenting, breaking rules, and getting really creative, and making something that's truly your own.